of your sessions and classes. Yeah,
Mm.
it's good to finally speak to you directly.
It absolutely is, and we plan to do more and more such face-to-face sessions with our customers, and so I think that's something that we want to do as well. I think it's really important to do this in this virtual world.
I
So,
agree.
right. So, so Shravan, first of all, congratulations on scoring 740. How does it feel?
Finally, I feel relieved after so many attempts. uh, I, uh, I somehow feel that now I'm kind of at peace with myself. So that's
Okay. So, 740 a score that you aimed for?
yeah. So yeah, I was not satisfied with my first two attempts because it was like it started with first attempt. I was not really knowing the right way to prepare. I was just going through the materials and
Mm-hmm.
online forums, but I didn't really get the feel of GMAT. I was and put together the fact that I first reserved the date and then started preparing. So I just went about it. During my second preparation, it was more like a very good preparation.
Mm-hmm.
But
So we'll talk about your attempts, I think. But first, what we do in this debriefing session is we really start with a bit about your background, what is it that you do, a bit about your educational background as well, just to set context. In
sure,
terms,
sure.
are you someone who's always done really well on competitive tests, or are you someone who's taking competitive tests for the first time? Why are you doing an MBA, or why do you plan to do an MBA right now at this particular stage of your career? So I think let's first briefly, in about 3 to 4 minutes, talk about that.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
So I'm pretty used to competitive exams. I graduated from NIT Trichy.
Okay.
It's a full. I mean, it's an abbreviated version for National Institute of Technology in India. So I have been well accustomed to these competitive exams like the IIT JEEs and
Mhm.
GATE. So I graduated from NIT Trichy 2011. So
Mhm.
I majored in production engineering. Post which I started working with John Deere. So it's a tractor manufacturing firm
Tractor,
from India.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Tractor and equipment, small light equipment
yeah, yeah,
manufacturer,
yeah.
yes.
But in India it's primarily the tractors. But over the US, yeah, they're major players. They do pretty much everything right from construction to everything.
Mhm.
So I've been working with Deere now for past like 4.5 years around,
Mhm.
and I have gained some significant expertise and experience in the product development aspect of tractors.
When you
So
say product development, it means one subsystem of a tractor, you know how to develop that as a product, is that?
yeah, so I don't develop. I validate the developed tractor.
Okay.
So if someone makes a tractor, I check whether that would be suitable for a customer or not.
Mhm.
So validation comes a part of, comes under the umbrella of engineering and development.
Mhm.
So work with new product developments for many global projects like for Thailand, US,
Mhm.
Europe. So I realized that I am in a little bit of a technical role, which I would change it to a techno-commercial role
Mhm.
by becoming someone like a product manager who can use both the experience of my job as well as get an MBA and then to better tap my potential in terms
So,
of
so you would want to own a product from right from okay, defining what the product should do, and to really conceiving the product and then taking it to
yeah,
market.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And
So
then, and what made you say that you've got to do an MBA? What part of your skill gap did you intend to fill, or do you intend to fill with an MBA?
uh, primarily the strategic aspects of business which I found lacking in my particular role, or probably which I found that it would take years of experience and expertise to get into a role which provides me opportunity to both understand and make strategic decisions. That was first thing, and second thing obviously was to uh, become a manager instead of a technical contributor. I always felt that I can be more of a people's person than I possibly can in my existing role. So this plus various interactions with many of my colleagues, friends from NIT, and even from people from DEAR who have had a degree. So so this was something, I mean, amalgamation of all this points which boiled me down to choose MBA. Of course, I didn't have this much clarity when I first wrote in 2013, but over the years I understood myself better.
Yeah, I think you're in a good position to write your admission essays now.
All right.
But so I can really see, I can see the clarity. So I think that's good. So let's talk about GMAT. You've been preparing for GMAT, for about 2 years now, right? Give or take.
Yeah, 1.5 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the GMAT journey. First attempt. So you thought you decided you have to take the GMAT, and so how did you go about preparing? How did you make those choices? So you prepared using books, as you mentioned in the email that you sent over.
Yeah. So the books have been always the same. I haven't really not purchased or borrowed any other thing other than those 3 books I have always had. Because I had a lot of friends who have been writing GMAT, like I don't know since when. It's been some 5 years since. Like most of my friends, they either take GMAT or they retake GMAT or they just speak about GMAT. So I always knew that the material wasn't a concern, or
So the recommendation to follow books came from your friends, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I started with reserving the date. I mean, booking my dates and then going about my preparation in my first attempt. So that was a good thing because I had a target date to go about. So I probably would have taken it little less seriously than it should be, because of my supposed familiarity with the exam. But nevertheless, I finished those official guide and Manhattan's sentence correction. Did a couple of Manhattan's practice tests, and served my GMAT prep softwares for the final few weeks. So I was averaging around 710, 720. I mean, like that also has scores which are less than 700s. But I kind of peaked right before the exam. But I don't know. I scored 690. It was pretty much in the range of my scores, but I always not was convinced with that.
So you scored 690. What was your quantum mobile split?
It was 50 and 30. No, it's not. It was not 50. It was 49 and 34.
49 and 34. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So and how long was your first preparation? How many weeks, months?
It was 3 months.
3 months. So it was still a significant amount of time.
Yeah, it was 3 months. Yeah, I gave it in September, so I started in June.
Okay, so September of 2013, you took the exam. You scored a 690, Q49, V34. So you said, okay, this is in the range, but I'm not happy. Then what did you do? Did you start preparing right away, or did you kind of?
No, I didn't start preparing right away. I wanted to do my benchmarking, or just to see how good the scores are. So I applied for a school in India. It's the ISB.
Okay.
So I went ahead with it, but I was not shortlisted for the interviews. So I understood it was not a great score which could save a poorly written essay, or it was just a mixture of both.
So you assessed poorly written?
Yeah, it was poorly written.
Okay. We'll talk a bit about those as well. All right. Okay. So the score wasn't good enough to
get into even for the interviews.
Okay.
So then it was a knee-jerk reaction again to write GMAT as early as possible. I mean, after obviously wasting some time throughout the application process and all that. Then again, I did the same thing. I started reading many of the blogs in Manhattan websites. There were a couple of instructors who were very. I personally like the blogs of Stacy
writes very well. Yes.
Yeah. So those things were not really about verbal or quants per se, but it was more about the strategic point of view and why people tend to mix things up during the exam, or what people get wrong
Mm.
during the preparation. So, and that time I again restricted myself with the books and the Manhattan series and the GMAT
Mhm.
prep. And I kind of took around 6 or 7 tests, and I hardly scored once under 700, below 700. So I was pretty confident, and this time around I booked the exam only 2-3 weeks before the actual date, and things were just fine. But then I was diagnosed for swine flu just like 10
Ooh.
days back before my exam. But I didn't want to, honestly, I didn't want to lose the momentum. So I kind of, boosted my intakes of antibiotics, and
Mm.
plus I always knew that I had fever, so that kind of messed up with my head.
Mhm.
So I don't know which one it was, but I ended up scoring a 690, but it's a different combination. I
Okay,
think I
what was the
lost.
combination? What was the
I
combination this time?
I think I had a +1 in verbal and -1 in quant, so it was
This-
48 by, if my memory. Yeah, I think this is the score. I think I even shared
mm.
the reports with e-GMAT when I
Mm.
enrolled for the
Okay.
uh, course, which
Mm.
happened in March. So that's when I bumped into your free webinars where you speak about how to score a 700 plus
Mhm.
strategic session. So
Mhm.
I decided right away that I didn't want to take any risks. At the
Mhm.
same time, I found that the e-GMAT course, I mean, I read the reviews from
Mhm.
e-GMAT Club, and one thing which was very clear was it was structured, and I thought it would bring me discipline. Plus,
Mhm.
I think the free session which I attended included the ones about the modifiers, which I still
Mhm.
think is one of the best sessions of e-GMAT.
Mhm.
So all these things pushed me to, you know, make the right decision of enrolling with the VLP, the
Mhm.
verbal
What
like
will I
exam.
prep? Yes.
So one another advantage of this program, which I realized after giving my GMAT, was that I would have never probably completed the study schedule which you guys gave me had it not been for the guarantee program of
Mhm.
e-GMAT. Because I always wanted to doubly make sure that I do everything which you asked me to do,
Mhm.
which I didn't realize then. But when I was writing the reviews for the GMAT club, I really thought that that pushed me even harder.
Mhm.
Uh, plus, yeah, regarding the e-GMAT course, I guess
So
I
let's talk a bit about it. Hold on. So see, you've taken the GMAT 3 times, right?
uh,
You're working professional, right? So what are your work hours?
I work in a factory, so I leave pretty early in the morning at 6:45, 7, and I come back around 6:15 in the evening.
Okay, so when
Uh,
do you study?
I I studied usually in the weekends, and like I studied. So since I have a very habit of getting up early, I start pretty early in the morning, around 5:30. I just put in an hour in the morning, and
Mm-hmm.
then probably another hour in the evening, uh, on a
Mm-hmm.
good day. Otherwise, it's just an hour in the evening.
Okay.
But I do it for a long time. I mean, I just do it for 2-3 months, so that I know I don't have a continuous preparation in the same day. So I always increase my schedule in terms of the days, so that the hours are taken care of.
Okay. So, and again, this was the same when you were preparing during a second attempt when you were preparing using books, and during the third attempt when you prepared using the e-GMAT course. It was again you had these two time slots, one at 5:30 in the morning for an hour, and the second one at some time in the evening time slot.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So did you have to make any changes in prior to starting your preparations, or even before the first attempt, and then while preparing? So did you make any changes in your personal life so that you could study in a dedicated fashion for these 2 hours?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, coming to think of it, I had a lot of changes in my personal life during, especially in the second hour, because in the first hour, usually it was just me in my room, in
Mhm.
the flat. Most people are not
When you say
awake.
first hour, right in the morning is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
5:30 in
yeah.
the morning.
I
Then you didn't have a
I-
problem. All you had to do was wake up because everyone else would be asleep.
yeah. So yeah, I tried many things. right from exercise, from changing apartments, and stuff like that. But I honestly don't know what works and what doesn't work. But I guess you just have to tune in to the whole.
No, what worked for you? I think that's something what we are interested in hearing. How did you?
I finally ended up going to an apartment where I was alone for like few months, probably a year. I was alone for in 2014. So it's not like I was studying the whole year, but it kind of brought me some self-discipline, which I thought was lacking.
Okay, so you found it difficult to start to devote these 2 hours per day, or about 14, 15 hours a week, or actually about 18 hours a week, including weekends, if when your
Yeah,
friends were around. But when you went to an apartment, which was 2014, you were able to do that. Is that
yeah.
what you?
I think it's 2015 because I enrolled in
2015.
e-GMAT.
That's what I was going to ask. What happened in 2015? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's something which is there as well. Okay.
Mm.
So you studied for the GMAT twice, and before you enrolled in the e-GMAT course, and so which means and you already had a V34, V35. So you knew a lot coming into the e-GMAT course. I mean, you were already about 70% on verbal. Um, what was, I mean, when you went through the various concept files, did you find anything different, or was there a lot of repetition? What was the things that stood out over there? Reading from a book versus studying from an audiovisual course.
Okay. Regarding the modules, as you call it, for sentence correction, I was kind of feeling that there was a lot to learn. Not in terms of the examples, but in terms of the concepts. I always knew that sentence correction had sometimes very lengthy questions. I mean, very lengthy sentences, and sometimes they are just a very 8-word or a 9-word sentence. I was familiar with the words and I mean the questions, but in terms of concepts, I think sentence correction really was an eye opener. I mean, because I think you guys kind of dissected it till probably the most minute level. Like I think it starts with what a verb is, which even though is frivolous, sometimes can clarify things for most people, even for people who've been around GMAT or who've been comfortable with English. So that was a very positive thing. I personally would recommend that to anyone who wants to do that again in GMAT. But that way, even critical reasoning also, if not as detailed or as unique as sentence correction, was still a game changer, because it also puts structure behind how you should go about.
It forces you to pre-think, right?
I'm sorry?
It forces you to pre-think.
Yes, yeah. The pre-thinking part is something which really, I mean, I have two roommates who are from IITs. I mean, this is an example. I'm going to take away your time, but I thought I should share this to you, because when I was taking this course, I had another friend of mine who was preparing, and we had different ways of approaching critical reasoning. We both were really good at it. I mean, comparatively than other sections, but I always preferred doing the pre-thinking part after going through the modules. But he used to just go about answering it, and he ended up agreeing that the pre-thinking really helps, and he scored a 770 then. So I really think such minute changes to your approach helps.
I think so. That's kind of, I can explain why pre-thinking came probably slightly later to him. If you have someone from an IIT already has that ability to absorb a lot of information, right? So that person, if you have that capacity to say, I can also absorb the information, the answer choice, yet keep the information in the argument distinct, and be able to arrive at an answer for most questions, and that's probably what he was seeing. But the problem is, once you hit a point where your mind needs to focus to a greater degree, then your mind's ability to absorb more information goes down. So, and if you are someone who's used to perfection, then you would change your methods, because what matters to you is perfection. Right? And so I think, and I've seen this with people from IT. And I myself have done my master's from IIT. So and so yes, you're stubborn, but what matters to you is success. And once you know this is a recipe for success, they'll change your dog, because in the end, that's the number that they'd be seen with, or rated on, basically. So yeah. So then, did you use a Scholaranium piece?
Yeah, I could. I mean, I unfortunately couldn't exhaust it because it had a lot of questions. But I think I made a fair usage for it. Especially, it was more like an adaptive test without actually going to a software separately for that. And the quality of the questions were also unique. It was not like I was hardly seeing questions of the same type. I was seeing questions of the same difficulty level, but definitely not of the same type. I would have probably finished like 30-40% of the questions.
Did you take ability quizzes?
Yeah. So I guess when I was part of the course, that's when the transition from the workshops to the ability quizzes happened. So it worked well for me because I missed the workshops for both sentence correction and CR. I was traveling home then. So, but luckily the ability quizzes came up, which had the flexibility to take any time when you want. So I did it very, I mean, at the later part of my preparation when I started doing my, what do you call, the exams, full length exams. So I would typically take one ability quiz a weekend. So that kind of boosted my confidence, saying that, okay, you are that above that 70%, which I think is the typical cutoff for your.
So what was? Do you remember your scores in the first ability quizzes, and then can you use the system? So did you really use the data provided to really figure out where to focus on?
I did that. Especially for Scholaranium and ability quizzes. But in ability quizzes, I was lacking only in sentence correction. So I think I did it twice or thrice. I started with 68%. I went to 40, trying to do something different, and then I ended up with 80 or 79 or something in sentence correction. I don't remember the exact numbers, but these were the patterns. But for critical reasoning and reading comprehension, since I had done it in the later part of my stage, I think I fared pretty average. I was around 70 or 75, I'm not sure. So, but for sentence correction, yeah, the numbers kind of pushed me. Every time I got a different number, I went back to the concept files because concept files always ensured that I had a fresh year of, I mean, especially the POEs, which is sometimes difficult to follow, but when you adhere to it, it gives you the benefits.
It does give you the benefit, yes. I mean, frankly, when I look at when we were creating solutions for Scholaranium, we went through about, I'd say, 2.5 iterations. I won't call it completely 3. And the reason we went through the iteration was to really say, hey, when someone reads the solution, they should be able to precisely figure out why they faltered and where they faltered. And that's why we went through. So we had a product called eScholar in 2014, which we completely scrapped and redid. And basically, the questions were similar to Scholaranium, but we enhanced the solution in a major way. Because we said, hey, we've got to be able to tell students why they're faltering, especially at this stage of their preparation. And that's why you see the solutions divided into steps. That's why you see the with RC, all the logical, all the paragraph summaries out there. What is it that you read? What should you have inferred? And what is the paragraph summary? Henceforth from there. And again, because I think that's what leads to improvement from especially if you said 68% to you went to about 80%. And even though it may seem like a 12% jump, but it does show up, and every single point jump when you're hitting the 90 percentiles on the verbal score is that much more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I've seen many of the online forums in which people try to sell their USP, let's call it, in terms of various GMAT course providers, but none of them have managed to do what e-GMAT has done. That they have shown a methodology to approach the questions instead of just trying to teach the concepts. which I think anybody can, or most people do it in a very decent way. But the methodology which is there in all the three sections, RC, CR, and SC, are pretty unique, and I think that is what I liked the most.
I won't say it's unique, I'll be very frank. So I think what we have been focused on doing is to really say, hey, how do we solve the question? And how should anyone who has a reasonable degree, not a super high intellect, but a reasonable degree, would go about in a methodical way to go ahead and solve that. Okay. And what really helps us when we are developing this, I think, the reason why we are able to come up with these methodologies are because when we develop them, we have 3 or 4 experts who work together. A couple of them are super bright. A couple of them are not so good in those sections. So if the guys who are not so good can't get it, then the students cannot get it anyway. Right? So it's that constant struggle that gets us to those methodologies to really say, if someone who's really good is able to get this and the other guy is not able to get this, it's okay. If you're really good and you were able to get this, tell me what are the steps that you went through in your mind. And it's that constant questioning back and forth that's what leads to these step-by-step methods. Because frankly, we believe if anything has to scale up, and when I say scale up means success needs to scale up. More and more people need to be successful, then things have to be broken down methodically.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think about your tractors in that regard, right, they're taking over more and more of human tasks, right? Mm-hmm. There are tractors that can, harvest automatically. You just put them in a field, you plug them in, and they'll harvest the entire crop without the guy riding it.
Yeah.
Right? And the reason they're able to do that is because you map the route methodically. There's a certain step that you've done. In step 1, the tractor needs to do this, blah, 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 blah. Here are the what shall I say, certain safeguards that a tractor must maintain.
Yeah.
Which is basically what humans do in their mind intuitively. You've got to spell them out. Yeah. That's kind of the approach that we followed while creating those solutions. And that's how the methodologies came out, frankly.
Great. That was a pretty interesting insight you had given me about how things had happened. Thanks for that.
Yeah. So what next for you, Sharavanan?
Sharavanan, yeah.
Sharavanan, yes.
So I've already started my applications, but mostly those are revolving around the round 2 deadlines, because I spent more than a month or so doing my due diligence, understanding the schools, the culture, and speaking to various alumni and students.
Good that you did that, first of all. Great job on doing that. Yeah. Not a lot of people look at the websites. Okay.
Yeah. So that took a little bit of time, more than I really anticipated. So I'm thinking of schools like Tuck and Darden. These two are finalized. I was very interested in Duke, but I guess I may not be able to do justice to the 3rd rounds. So this is pretty much about it. But I'm also planning to shortlist a few other schools so that I kind of apply to like 4 or 5 schools. I want to go into consulting or product management. I have not still really fine-tuned on that, because that is something I'm still working on, contemplating and introspecting as I speak to many of my alumni. But this is what the situation right now is.
Okay, I don't think you need to make that decision anyway.
All right.
I think so. What you really need to focus on is which sector would you want to go in, even when you want to go in consulting. If do you want to go plain umbrella strategy consulting, or do you want to really focus on sector and a profile? So is it going to be just manufacturing and a certain profile, or is it going to be a functional profile and regardless of the sector?
Okay. So I had a thought about it. Many of the people who are already there in the consulting area asked me to think about the sector as well. But my concern would be that I have a experience which is strictly operational in nature. Manufacturing firm, product development. So without a very strong analytical work exposure, like many consultants already have, who've been having a pre-consulting experience, I have my reservations regarding how well I'm going to be perceived in
Don't
the
have.
job market.
Don't have. I will tell you one thing about how people portray things in America versus how people portray things in India. If you're saying XXX in America, there's there are qualifying adjectives that you use that are not as precise as they need to be.
Okay.
Okay. If someone says, and another thing that says, people would say this is very, very difficult. This was very difficult. I can tell you, don't let anyone set the benchmark for you to say something's difficult.
Okay.
If that cannot be broken down into why something's difficult.
Okay.
Okay, that's one thing. The other piece is, that's why you went to the business school. That's why you'll have all those consulting assignments during the business school.
Yeah.
I came from a research background. I wasn't even into operations. And
Okay.
I went into marketing and product management right after my MBA.
Okay.
I managed multiple products. And trust me, I did a lot better than most of the other people who had prior product marketing experience.
Okay. That's something which is motivating me right now.
Yeah, and you're analytical enough if you're from an IT switchy, so that part you don't need to worry about.
All right. So I mean, trust me. I mean, this is. I mean, I really didn't know that I'm gonna get this push, but this really helps me. I mean, especially from someone like you. It really appreciate. I mean, I really appreciate it.
Okay. The other pieces, look at, as I said, look at the places where you would want to be. So geographic location. That's the other piece that matters a lot.
Yeah. So just give me a second. Yeah. So yeah, ideally, I've been focusing my research only in US, probably because I thought that is the.
But even in US, there are geographic pockets.
Yeah, primarily the East Coast, because I don't want to get into the technology roles or the industry as such. So that's why I mean, for many people suggested me that for an operations background or someone who wants to get back to some industries related to operations, the Detroit area, or I mean the Michigan
area, yes.
Yeah, is somewhat preferable or ideal. But I always understood two principles, like the East Coast is famous for finance and consulting, whereas the West Coast is preliminarily for technology. But I never understood, where do people who don't want to be there in either of these areas go?
No. So I think here is where there's a very easy way to figure things out. Okay, one is look at schools and look at where do people who hire from those schools get placed. There's a geographical location.
Okay.
So that's one piece, and the other piece is, and I'll tell you this: most schools, the placement is 60-70% of the placement is within the state, within 50 miles.
Okay, the final location.
Yes, the final location. And for a very simple reason, even in most business schools today, 60-70% of the applicants are local.
Okay.
Right? Or 40-45% are local, not 60-70. Numbers may have changed, but there's a good number which is local. They have houses, they're not going to move away. Okay. And those who move over there also in those 2 years, they kind of get used to that area. And they want to stay around over there. So I think that's one piece which is there. The other piece is, so that's one way to approach it, to really look at where do people get placed. Okay, and you can also focus on the remaining 30-40% who are not local after they graduate. Where are they getting placed? Which are geographic locations? Okay. The second way to look at it is to then say, hey, shortlist 15 companies who you would want to work for. Whether you're talking about in consulting probably 5, in manufacturing about another 10 to 11 companies, and figure out where their headquarters are and major product headquarters. So, for example. With Honeywell, the company that I work for, they have a headquarters in Minneapolis, right? You're always going to have jobs over there in Minneapolis because the headquarters over there. but the product headquarters of various divisions are at various places. So, for example, for our aerospace business, which is a $10 billion business, the headquarters is in Phoenix, Arizona. For our industrial business, I think the headquarters, it was in Phoenix, Arizona when I worked there. Then it got moved to London. It probably is still in London, or maybe in Texas as well.
Okay.
So I think that will allow you to narrow down to really say if in a certain area there are a bunch of such businesses.
Okay.
Then business schools around that would give you jobs in the sectors that you're looking at.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
So for example, I think GE and Honeywell and United Technologies and all of these, which are manufacturing firms, for example, some of them in defense as well, they basically will have their headquarters within a certain geographic area.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
So I think that is a pretty interesting way to approach my problem. I mean, having spoken a lot about MBAs, I thought I would clarify another aspect by speaking to you this. Whether the companies which hire people for the manufacturing firms or manufacturing units, do they have any reservations for hiring international candidates in terms of providing them the H-1B visas? This is something which many of the international candidates have mentioned.
That's a very good point, and I think that's something that will vary from company to company.
Okay.
A company and how they value you. So there are certain companies who will have. I will be very clear. And there are certain others who won't.
Okay.
Okay. And I think that's another filter that you need to put in to really say, hey, when you want to decide where you want to work. Because what's important is that first job. Once you get the H1, no other company will have a problem extending the H1.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So I mean, consulting companies definitely will get you the H1s.
Okay.
For example, I mean, that's kind of if they want you as a candidate, they'll get you the H1.
All right.
As they should. That's again, but the schools will tell you this information.
Okay.
So talk to the alums. I mean, that's one of the other yardsticks that you can really say. Talk to schools and say, hey, how confident are international students about getting a job and working in US post graduation?
Okay.
If they're worried about it, then ask them why and ask them why are they worried? Probably their seniors had an issue. If they're not, then also to really say, hey, which firms do the H1s?
Okay.
Because that's going to be a big factor.
Okay. Okay. So I think I should speak to alums very particularly about this particular point. So I'll do that as well.
Okay. All right. It was very nice talking to you, Sharavanan. Good luck with your applications, and let me know if we can help in any other way.
Sure, Rajat. It was a very, very interactive and interesting conversation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
You too.